Om. Students, we now come to a very interesting subject, that is poetry, and in relation to dance, a visual image of poetry. Movement somehow cannot lie. It's a journey from the one who creates a situation, a story, a plot, a mood, and sets the tune, to the ones who bring it alive as a stage performance, enacting the same by not only respecting the intention of the lyricist in every word and meaning, but also adding that extra dimension which is required in order to fully explore every possibility that may arise out of the poem. It is the imagination of the dancer and the competence of the singer and accompanying musicians that gives expression to the implicit meaning, giving it an extension. After acting the word-to-word narrative as a dancer with the help of Padartha Abhinaya, the Sanchari Vyabhichari bhavas flow appropriately, like a river with the help of a deeper nuance in the musical composition. This makes the performance finer in the aesthetic aspect for rasa to fructify. It is important to convey the exact intention understood by the linguistic meaning of the poem, visualizing the situation or scene, studying the character, whether divine, historic, legendary, or common man of ordinary background. Knowledge of the poet, the tune or the raga and the rhythm or the thala employed, whether slow, fast, qualities of the raga, etc., will all help in categorizing the types of the heroes, heroines, actions and reactions, whereby the appropriate abhinaya can be rendered. So, Angika, Vachika, Satvika travel, move after introspection on the poem. Whenever we find that manodharma or intuition is acting in the depiction, there is actually a voice from within that gets expressed at the spur of the moment, spontaneous and not practiced. So, there is room for all this to be thought of. The sthai bhava or predominant mood of the poem should never be lost nevertheless by the dancer despite many sancharis, else the rasa which was first known or experienced by the poet would be misconstrued and not successfully conveyed or transmitted. Just as the poet is given expression to his thoughts through the written words, the dancer expresses suggested meanings of the same through the dramatic art. When it is said that creation started with the word, it is important for us to know the subtle dimensions in the process of this creation. Rasa is the goal of any artistic enterprise. Now, the rasa of the poet is transferred to the dancer and then the spectator. So, what really happens in this connection is that it is the consciousness that is getting transferred, because rasa has been identified as the recognition of consciousness by all the great scholars. This consciousness has vibration, spanda, characterized by sound or spota. The sages spoke of 4 levels of speech: para, pashyanti, madhyama and vaikhari. The Rig Veda itself has a saying like that vak exists in 4 forms. 3 are hidden and the 4th is what men speak. The subtle body composed of the chakras or the energy centers will have a corresponding vak. Para is the first stage of sound or vak in its unmanifest stage and is the source of all root ideas and germ thoughts. Shabda Brahman manifests through his power of Maya, first as Paravani in the lowermost part of the spine, Muladhara, then as Pashyanti in the Manipura, at the navel chakra, and then Madhyama in the Anahata at the heart chakra, and then eventually as Vaikari in the Vishuddha at the throat. This is the divine descent of voice or word. Descent indicates creation from subtlest to the grossest, and ascent indicates dissolution from grossest to the subtlest, Avarohan and Arohan. To give an explanation of these sounds or the subtle dimensions in these sound, para is indicative of a truth that there is a sphere of superconsciousness where the sound is heard in different dimensions. Pashyanti represents the intellectual consciousness like an idea which has not been expressed in words. In this stage, the sound possesses qualities such as color and form. But the difference in language does not exist, as this sound is intuitive and beyond concepts. Here resides the willpower, the Ichcha Shakti. The next, Madhyama, represents mental consciousness. Here there is a clear distinction between the sound and the object it denotes. This is more of a mental speech rather than the external audible speech. Within the Madhyama Vak exists the knowledge of Jnana Shakti. Finally, Vaikari represents the physical consciousness and audible speech manifestation. Vaikari is a sound that has come all the way from the root chakra with the force of Vayu upwards to the throat, mouth, teeth and tongue to become an articulate sound audible to the external ear. Within the Vaikari Vak exists the power of action or Kriya Shakti. The flow of divine consciousness from the inaudible seed of evolution to the audible Vaikari is the tree of art. The poet, actor, spectator are compared to the root, tree, flower and fruit of the tree, and the hearts of all are pervaded by rasa, which makes the journey from one to the other. So it was the spoken or the chanted word, again having arisen from the unspoken meditated word of the poet, from the innermost recesses of the art, that led to so many different art forms, each with its special ambience and audience. Kavya has always been a performing art. Poetry in ancient India was never to be silently read, but chanted, sung, performed and celebrated in the company of others. Literary and performing arts were not fragmented as they seem to be today. It is only the skilled poet or the artist who is capable to capture the heart-throbbing moment and convert it to a moment of beauty in an artistic creation, whether through the lyrics of the poet or the brush of the artist or the histrionics of the dancer. When poetry was recited with a certain meter and melody, a song was created and performed on stage with gesture and movement as natya or dance drama. For example, Rama is not just an individual but also a universal being. This is what happens in the process of universalization and becoming one with the aestheticized universal being. It is the liberation of a being from the narrow self and becoming one with the universal consciousness. And this is essential for the poet equally as with the dancer or the spectator. The poet describes, the actor plays, and the viewer or the reader enjoys. This puts forth dissolution or pralaya as a necessary condition. Dissolution or death of the ego would filter out all identities that veil the universal consciousness and bestow the grace of rasa. It is said that the creator cannot see his own creation. If he starts seeing it, he cannot create. He will develop a feeling of possession for the form that is being created by him. It is important for us to have some idea about the rasa dhvani of kavya, for which we take the help of Anandavardhana's Dhvanyaloka and the commentary Lochana by Sri Abhayava Gupta. This revolutionized Sanskrit literary theory by proposing that the main goal of poetry is the evocation of rasa. And this process can be explained only by a semantic power which is beyond the denoted meaning, which is that of suggestion. This says that dhvani or suggestion is the soul of poetry. The words are the body of poetry and the dhvani is the soul, the breath or the prana. One can, with the knowledge of grammar and prosody, analyze the body of the poetry, but the soul can be felt directly only by appreciation. The expressed meaning is important, but the suggested meaning remains more important. It is compared to the relation of the meaning of individual words to the meaning of a sentence. We cannot grasp the meaning of a sentence unless we know the meaning of the words. But we do not form mental images of these words and then assimilate to get the meaning of the sentence. When the sentence is finished, its meaning as a unit flashes through the mind. Correct? Similarly, dhvani flashes into the mind of the listener when he grasps the prima facie meaning. In this theory, the basic postulate is that utterances possess a literal meaning and also convey a further meaning. Rasa dhvani, flavor or emotion or mood or sentiment, is the essence of poetry. Rasa is the realization, according to Abhinavagupta, of one's own consciousness. It is an ideal and impersonalized form of joy, universal in character, and the aesthetic pleasure resulting is general and not particular. It can only be suggested but not described. It is the Sahridya, the connoisseur, who is capable of discerning the intricate chords of veiled word in poetry and senses the aesthetic relish. Anandavardhana clearly states that appreciation of poetry is essentially the same as the creation of it. Aesthetic experience, characterized by the immersion of the subject in the aesthetic object, is akin to beatitude of ecstasy or Brahman or the self. Some features of Kavya. In Indian tradition, a philosopher and a poet are always expressed by a single term, Kavi, someone with a vision. So the poet is not only a philosopher, he is also a composer. Anandavardhana's brilliant exposition of Dharmakirti's poems also establishes the identity of Dharmakirti the poet and Dharmakirti the philosopher. However, the knowledge or Jnana Marga was transcendental yet insufficient to invoke in common parlance that which devotion or bhakti could infuse and suffuse. Pouring out from the hearts of some of the greats like Adi Shankara, whereas stotras, tantric and agamic poems like Saundarya Lahari, Ardhanarishwarashtakam, Shiva Panchaksharam, etc. Poetic works of the Shaiva Siddhantic saints were created on Nataraja of Chidambaram, like the Thirumandiram, Tiruvachakam of Manikavachakar, the Thevarams, the three most prominent poets of the 7th century, the Nayanars, that is Sambandar, Tirunavukkarasar and Sundarar. All were paying towards the poet, temple, dancer triad. In Vaishnavite devotion, Andal sings of her love for Krishna as Venkateshwara. The devotional pourings of Alvars were the hymns of worship to Vishnu known as the Divya Prabandham. The figuratives or the similes in poetry, both the Shabda and Artha form the body of Kavya. Man possesses a deep passion for ornamentation of various things in his surroundings. Whatever is elegant is eternal. So God is not only referred as eternal but also as beautiful. Bhuvana Sundara, Satyam Shivam Sundaram, etc. Alamkara literally means that which enhances the beauty of speech. Hamsa or swan in Kavya literature form a linguistic and aesthetic perspective. It is referred to in a wealth of Sanskrit poetry, prose and drama. Ashwaghosha too used beautiful similes such as mountain to depict the beauty of the solid body, Kamadeva for Buddha, lotus for the eyes, hand and face, etc. Lotus plays an important role in the literature and art of classical India. Vishnu is said to be Padmanabha, Brahma Padmodbhava, Lakshmi Padma, and so on. In the Kumara Sambhava, the analogy of lotus is often invoked in the description of Parvati. Lokokti in Kavya is one of the significant elements which beautifies it. When vast usage of beautification of literature is transformed into short but meaningful words, yet which is beautiful. Romantic poetry. By their very nature, romantic moments are evanescent, spontaneous and unrehearsed. It is a sheer romantic beauty, be it of longing or rejoicing, of expectant waiting, of joy or remorse, of anger or jealousy. Shringar Rasa is indeed a testimony of the creative imagination of both poet and dancer, followed by recreation of that emotion by the spectator. The origins are to be found in poetry, which in its primeval form was oral, and from that many new art forms were to emerge. The Gupta period saw the emergence of romantic Mahakavya, epic court poetry, Natya drama, Muktaka miniature poetry, and Khandakavya lyrical poetry. The names of Kalidasa, Bhartrhari, and Amaru, among many others, are written in letters of gold in the genre of romantic literature. Kalidasa outbeats other poets in the description of the sublime and the beautiful with the natural phenomena. Kavyeshu Natakaramyam Tatra Ramyam Shakuntalam. Among all the literary discourses, drama is most charming, and even among the dramas, Abhijnana Shakuntalam is the most delightful. This is a popular maxim. Bhartrhari's Sringara has an unmistakable undercurrent of vairagya or renunciation. Even when he speaks of the pleasures of the moon and the beloved's face, he says, once the mind has sensed impermanence, nothing is the same. Amaru paints the varied moods and nuances of love with words that evoke colorful scenes sonorous with music. The two important Khandakavya, Ritusamharam and Meghadutam of Kalidasa, which have set the precedent for those in the tradition. Kalidasa's evocation of the romantic emotion depict a graceful sensuality and restrained passion in a world where trees yearn for the touch of a woman as much as a man would long for her embrace. Messages are conveyed through clouds, and the changing seasons are understood as the changing colors of love. The nocturnal tryst of the Abhisarika Nayika is revealed at dawn by the Mandara flowers that have fallen from her hair and the golden lotuses of her ears. Meghadutam is the epitome of the Virohotkhandita Nayika. Considered the high point of Tamil literature, Sangam poetry consisting of about 3,500 poems was romantic, called Aham, meaning inner or household. It also contained heroic poetry called Puram, meaning outer or public. Some images from the Tamil Sangam poetry. The dancing peacock was like you. The guileless deer looked like you. The jasmine bloom smelt of you. Tamil poets also celebrated the courtesan, although her position is secondary to that of wife. She stands at the entrance to her home or visits festivals where she can display her attractiveness. The wife's reaction is seen in, "Let him come here, I shall seize his garland and his upper garment and tie him down to me with my long tresses." The Tamil poet assumed the personality of the heroine and addressed God as she would a lover. Bhakti Sringara arose in the Tamil country from a bedrock of romantic poetry on the one hand and a joyous life-affirming view on the other, leading eventually to the creation of Bhagavata Purana. The epistemology of metaphysics of Bhakti is the same passionate longing for the love of Krishna, from which was to arise Prema Bhakti or loving devotion to Krishna, and which took the form of Bhakti Sringara of Chaitanya in Orissa and Bengal, and Bhakti Shankar of Vallabhacharya in Gujarat and Rajasthan. Tulsidas and Meera in the field of romantic poetry, Riti Kavya celebrated the romantic love of Radha and Krishna in sensuous and worldly terms, whereas Bhakti Kavya was entirely devotional in character. Of the other poets in this genre, the names that have influenced dance are those of Vidyapati, Keshavadas and Bihari. Vidyapati describes spring nights of longing that are made up of flowers in groves, humming bees, trumpeting elephants, moonlight, sandal paste and a bed of kunda flowers. In the genre of romantic poetry, the Vasanta Vilasa occupies an important place for several reasons. Written in Old Gujarati in the 15th century and illuminated by paintings, the Vasanta Vilasa forms a part of the Phagu literature and celebrates the longings and joys of a Nayika in the season of spring. The poetry of Nayika Bheda takes us inside the mind of the Nayika and forms an important part of the treasure of Sringara Rasa Kavya. Shadratu Varnam, or the description of the 6 seasons, Vasanta, Grishma, Varsha, Hemanta, Shravana and Shishira, is an important part of the Kavya literature in Sanskrit. Kalidasa says, of all the seasons, Vasanta or spring is most important to those in love. The blossoms of spring are like arrows of Kama. The mango tree bent with red sprouts kindle ardent desire. The Ashoka tree that bears blossoms red like coral makes the hearts sorrowful. The Atimukta creepers, whose blossoms are sucked by intoxicated bees, excite the minds. The Kimshuka grove, bent with blossoms, appears like a bride with red garments. However, Sanskrit literature did not have Baramasa poetry, which was a description of the seasons of the 12 months in Hindi dialects. Baramasa compositions of Keshavadasa are like Chaitra, charming creepers and young trees have blossomed and parrots are seen. Vaisakha, the earth and the atmosphere are filled with fragrance, but this fragrance is blinding for the bee and painful for the lover who is away from home. Jeshta, the sun is scorching and the rivers have run dry. Ashad, strong winds are blowing, birds do not leave their nest. Shravana, rivers run to the sea, creepers cling to trees, lightning meets the clouds, peacocks dance, announcing the meeting of the earth and the sky. Bhadrapad, dark clouds have gathered, there is thunder as rain pours, lions roar and elephants break the trees. Ashwin, the sky is clear, the lotuses are in bloom. Kartika, woods and gardens, the sky are clear and bright lights illuminate the homes. The universe seems to be pervaded by a celestial light. Margashirsha, rivers and ponds are full of flowers and joyous notes of swans fill the air. Says Keshavadasa, this is the favorite month of Krishna. Pausha, the earth and the sky are cold. People prefer oil, cotton, betel, fire and sunshine. Magha, forests and gardens echo with the sweet notes of birds and bees humming. All directions are aromatic with musk, camphor and sandal. Faguna, spring. Women and men in every home play holy with gay abandon. Surdas brought out the subtle nuances of philosophy and romance, the togetherness and separation of the gopis, who are at once lovers and devotees at the same time. Surdas is able to bring out the subtle nuances of the Vaishnava philosophy of Bheda Bheda, different and yet not different, of transcendence and immanence.